Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Sunday, April 26th, 2020, and today we're going to be taking a look at a 269 to 269 probable scenario for the 2020 presidential election. So when you take a look at this electoral map, not much has changed from the 2016 presidential election. The only states that have flipped are Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Maine's 2nd Congressional District. Besides that, every state has remained the same from the 2016 election. So why talk about this? Well, Wisconsin and Arizona are two Republican states from 2016, which I currently have in the Joe Biden column. But those states are probably the least Democratic states out of all the states that would go to Joe Biden. Pennsylvania was where he was born, and Joe Biden's primary performance in Michigan shows that Joe Biden has something that Hillary Clinton didn't. And considering that the Democrats only need to outperform the Hillary Clinton margin from 2016 by 1% in both of those states, I don't think it's going to be too hard for Vice President Biden. But President Trump has a little bit stronger of a hold in Wisconsin. In fact, it is the closest state according to polling data. Not even Arizona is that close, but Arizona also has Republican roots, and I could understand why Arizona would go to the GOP if Trump gave it more attention. Now, when you look at this electoral map, 269 to 269, nobody reaches the 270 electoral votes needed to win. So what happens? Well, there's always a possibility of a faithless elector. Essentially, someone who doesn't want to vote for either Joe Biden or Donald Trump when it comes down to being an elector. In 2016, there were 7 faithless electors, 5 Democrats and 2 Republicans. Now, some of these states have binding electors, which means that these electors have to vote for the popular state winner, regardless. And there's a number of fines and possibly even jail time imposed for electors that don't vote for the popular state winner, because that just seems like it's an undemocratic system. Imagine if Donald Trump had lost the 2016 election to Hillary Clinton because of 40-some faithless electors. Now, when you look at the 2016 electoral map, it wasn't close. Donald Trump was supposed to receive 306 electoral votes, and Hillary Clinton was supposed to receive 232. So the margin wasn't exactly the worst for Donald Trump, and definitely wasn't good for Hillary Clinton. So a lot of these electors realized that and realized that it didn't matter. These 2 Republicans weren't hurting Donald Trump's chances at the presidency because he already had it in the bag. Same thing for those 5 faithless Democratic electors. So realistically, I don't think that there will be any faithless electors if there is a 269 to 269 tie. If that happens, it would completely tip the scale of the election in one candidate's favor or another. And in fact, even if there were any faithless electors, they probably wouldn't vote for either Joe Biden or Donald Trump. In 2016, none of these 7 faithless electors crossed over party lines, not necessarily party lines, crossed over candidate lines. Those 3 Democrats in the state of Washington voted for Colin Powell, a Republican, and one of them voted for Spotted Eagle. One of them in Hawaii voted for Bernie Sanders, and 2 Republicans in the state of Texas, one voted for John Kasich and the other voted for Ron Paul. So usually they don't switch party lines, but even if they do, it's not for the other candidate. So that probably won't happen this time around either. So when we reach the United States, House Representatives, well, that's the next step. If there's no faithless electors, you move on to the House vote, not the House vote, you move on to the, counting in the United States House, and then if there's still a tie, 269 to 269, it moves on to the House and Senate vote. So who votes for what? The House votes for the president, and the Senate votes for the vice president. Now, they do it a little bit differently. Though the Democrats will likely retain the House in the 2020 House elections, that's not how they do things. Every state has 1 vote in the 2020 election if there's an electoral tie for the House Representatives. 1 vote. States such as Delaware will have the same voting power as states such as California. So this is when party composition truly matters. Whichever state has more Republicans or more Democrats in the House of Representatives serving, they will likely vote for their respective candidates, and that's how that state will vote. Even if there's, let's say, 14 Democrats voting for Joe Biden in Florida, and then let's say 13 vote for Donald Trump in Florida as well, Joe Biden would narrowly win it. Or, for example, in North Carolina, looking at the Cook political estimate, right now there's only 3 likely flips for 2020. Texas 23rd, North Carolina 2nd, and North Carolina 6th. North Carolina is a perfect example because if you take North Carolina, there are 5 Democrats there after 2020, supposedly, and 8 Republicans. The Republicans still win the overall state vote. So therefore, Donald Trump would get a vote from the state of North Carolina. Now, the United States Senate is very similar to how the United States Senate would go. Every state can vote with an overall, 2 senators per state. Essentially, they would actually have a little bit more representation than the House of Representatives vote. But this is what my current prediction is after the 2020 Senate elections. So if you take a look at this, we can pretty much knock the vice president situation out of the way. If this is the vote, it looks like Vice President Mike Pence would win the vice presidential race. And looking at that, it might convince a couple of other people, knowing this ahead of time, to vote for Donald Trump, even if they are a Democratic state. But I genuinely don't think that's going to be the issue. When you take a look at the party composition, the Democrats may have the overall majority in the House of Representatives. They do not have it state by state. They had 17 majority Democratic states prior to the 2018 midterms, okay? And now they have 22. Let's talk about which 22 states those are. That's Illinois. Iowa, surprisingly, despite that state expecting to go to the GOP in the presidential election, goes to the Democrats. Minnesota, Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, pretty much all of these states, all up here. District of Columbia does not get voting representation in this. New Hampshire and Maine, so that one would probably go as well. 1-1 actually, but they actually have 2 Democrats, but I don't know about that second district going to the GOP or not this time around, but I'm just going to assume that all the toss-ups remain the same from the 2018 elections. Obviously, that probably won't happen, but then again, I'm not going into a deep dive into the House races this time around. Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona. Arizona also went to the Democrats. Let me move this over so you guys... Arizona also went to the GOP in the presidential election, but would go to the Democrats based off this vote. Just shows you how the system may not be working in favor of a certain political party or not. So that puts the Democrats at 22. Let's talk about the Republican states. So there's a number of them, obviously. They have the overall majority. They have 26 states, according to this. It says 5 right here, but there's 1 up here because the simulator didn't let me edit it. By the way, I am on yet another political map simulator, yapms.com. Texas obviously goes to the GOP, so pretty much all of the southern states. This is in 2008. Georgia, North Carolina, Florida. Pretty much all of these states did vote for Trump, according to the presidential election map that I have up. And, that's just how the map would go. So Wisconsin, like the presidential map, actually goes to the GOP. So that puts Donald Trump effectively winning the presidency based off purely the House vote. Now, what about Michigan and Pennsylvania? These are 2 states that are tied. Now, considering that they went to Joe Biden, according to my presidential estimate for the 269-269 tie, there likely would be a little bit of Republican crossover there. Maybe Justin Amash could convince another Republican colleague, considering that he's the one, I believe, who actually broke down into a tie when he moved over to the independent column. But based off the popular vote, it is likely that a Republican representative does move over to the Democratic side just to appease their constituency if they are in a Hillary Clinton district from 2016 and a Joe Biden district, but also just reelected because they're an incumbent. But that doesn't change the overall results. Donald Trump would win the election if there was a 269 tie if things stay the same in the House of Representatives. The Democrats would effectively have to flip and win a state in Michigan and Pennsylvania to secure their victories, but flip another state or 2 other states in order to have an overall, House of Representatives majority if there was a 269 tie. Now, this isn't the likeliest scenario, and we probably won't reach this because one of the other candidates will probably have a larger victory over one another than one electoral vote if it does come down to 270 to 268. And just looking at this electoral map, sure, it seems possible, but we probably won't see Maine's 2nd District go to the Democrats and Wisconsin go to the GOP, or we probably won't see Arizona go to the GOP and Maine's 2nd District not. So just looking at that map, despite each state individually being possible going to each party, you have to realize that there are trends here. If Joe Biden is doing well here, he probably will do well in Wisconsin, despite it being the closest one. And realistically, they will all vote the same, but it isn't, out of the ordinary if Wisconsin does go to the GOP, as these House races would show. So essentially, Vice President Mike Pence would be Vice President Mike Pence after 2020, and Donald Trump would be reelected despite there being a 269 tie. So this doesn't accurately reflect the populations, and that just completely would get rid of the electoral college scenario, which is what they were trying to avoid by putting in this House of Representatives system. Obviously, if you just had another representation of the population, well, it wouldn't necessarily do any good other than just make it a proportional system for every single state. I mean, it would just be like Nebraska had been applied to every single state. Now, whether or not people agree with that, it typically benefits the Democrats and Republicans in different years. In 2012, it would have benefited the Republicans, and in 2016, it would have benefited the Democrats. So it really just all depends, but based off what is outlined in the United States Constitution, this is what the results would be. Donald Trump would be reelected president. Vice President Mike Pence would be, I guess, re-elected vice president, and there would be 4 more years of Donald Trump, according to the 269 scenario. The only possibility of, let's say, the Democrats getting a Democratic VP is if they flip 2 states in the United States Senate. And keep in mind, they're already picking up 2, so they would have to have a net gain of 4, and also flip possibly, other races in a number of other states. Maybe some single states, such as Montana, actually seems in play. But other than that, it doesn't look like it's going to be too hopeful for the Democrats in the House for overall party composition. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. By the way, I am starting to work on that full election night today. That video probably will be somewhere around 40 minutes long, but stay tuned for that one sometime soon, and I will see you all tomorrow.